Fentanyl is now officially designated a weapon of mass destruction after President Trump signed a new executive order. Reports indicate President Trump has directed the Pentagon to deploy military force against drug cartels in Latin America. According to the DEA, 60% of analyzed tablets are now laced with this fatal narcotic. 3:11 a.m. in Houston, Texas. An eerie, heavy silence had fallen over the neighborhood streets. Behind a canopy of massive oaks sat a white structure known locally as a Somali Community Outreach Center. The Baraka Relief Center was a nonprofit operation that had functioned undisturbed for nearly a decade. Nominally, the group provided cultural integration and vital support services for incoming Somali refugee populations. Under the leadership of Abdi Karim Hassan, the center reportedly promoted education and local community assistance initiatives. Records suggested they aided 1,800 families, distributing $9 million in relief over 5 years. Local leaders and politicians frequently toured the site, endorsing its supposed humanitarian mission. While donors believed in the cause, federal authorities uncovered a much darker truth that morning. Investigators identified the site as the nerve center for a $2 billion illicit trafficking empire. An illicit network thrived within this legitimate facade, shielded by systemic corruption and fraud. 3:42 a.m. As sunlight neared, federal agents moved to execute a high-stakes search warrant. A fleet of 24 dark SUVs arrived silently as 68 federal agents prepared for the raid. 2 armored units took tactical positions to block the facility's primary entrance. A lone helicopter hovered above as tactical teams breached the steel door in 8 seconds. Moving with surgical precision, agents systematically cleared the interior of the building room by room. The discovery stunned even the most veteran federal agents inside the facility. Agents seized $11.8 million in cocaine hidden within wall compartments and secure safes. They recovered encrypted hard drives and burner phones linked to a vast web of other facilities. However, the information buried in those documents would completely reframe the entire criminal investigation. Currently, 27 federal cases are pending, with all suspects facing severe mandatory prison sentences. Every individual involved is now looking at a minimum of 20 years behind federal bars. Files revealed 271 transactions, including $23 million from completely unknown sources. Records showed cartel-linked protection payments and transport permits, all bearing official administrative stamps. Narcotic shipments linked to the Sinaloa cartel were officially cleared with administrative stamps. Federal authorities suspect the missing millions were funneled directly into a global trafficking network. This apparatus allegedly financed the smuggling of over 1.2 tons of narcotics into America. If validated, this charity was never about refugees, but rather a sophisticated criminal front. The organization essentially served as a hidden financial engine for a visible criminal syndicate. Was this a humanitarian mission compromised, or a calculated criminal masterpiece? Share your thoughts below. The administration clarified that narco-terrorists trafficking drugs into the country are now considered lethal targets. The government is now actively pursuing these precise enforcement measures. By morning, the Houston Center was cordoned off, a stark monument to a systemic nightmare. Encrypted files revealed a criminal architecture that extended far beyond a single Houston storefront. Abdi Karim Hassan oversaw an entire ecosystem of front organizations rather than one charitable center. His network expanded across Texas, establishing deep operations in both Dallas and Austin. The organization followed a methodical blueprint for large-scale illicit operations and corporate precision. At the core of this blueprint was a disciplined strategy for moving vast amounts of capital. To bypass federal oversight, every transaction remained strictly under $49,000. Investigators identified 1,700 transfers moving through accounts in Nevada, Arizona, and across Texas. 6 hours prior to the raid, the network hurriedly attempted to erase their internal history. They deleted records for $31.4 million involving international aid and federal grants. While masked as community costs, investigators recognized these as massive illicit profit transfers. The hallmarks of a sophisticated laundering engine were undeniable. Detectives now suspect this trafficking syndicate relied on a trio of shadow entities holding legitimate state permits. Brightbridge Community Services, a registered vendor ostensibly providing neighborhood outreach and youth development initiatives. North Star Educational Supply LLC, a purported wholesaler of textbooks and vocational training equipment for schools. Horizon Care Logistics Solutions, a regional shipping firm focused on sensitive medical hardware and climate-controlled freight. To the public, they were pillars of industry. Yet, according to the authorities, these facades merely camouflaged a sprawling, clandestine trafficking network. The illusion collapsed when federal agents inspected the registered offices, finding that many were non-existent. One site was a hollow office suite. Another was simply a retail mailbox in a shopping mall. A third location led investigators to a warehouse that had been derelict for nearly 3 years. By that afternoon, agents reached a haunting conclusion. This nonprofit was doing more than just mismanaging its books. It functioned as a professional washing machine, shuffling millions through phantom firms to scrub illicit capital clean. What if those missing $23 million had never actually vanished at all? Suppose that capital served as the foundation for an enterprise far more sinister than simple embezzlement. A mechanism engineered to transport massive quantities of contraband across the nation, completely under the radar. This sparked a chilling inquiry that agents could no longer evade. Who within the Texas government facilitated this? Even as the true dimensions of the conspiracy surfaced, the case took a haunting turn. Once specialists bypassed the security on the drives recovered in Houston, agents anticipated uncovering mundane logistics logs and internal accounting ledgers, or perhaps cartel chatter. Instead, they stumbled into the explosive realm of a high-level political corruption probe. Deep within a protected folder, experts found a document bearing an innocuous label, Compliance. Initially, it appeared forgettable, just a standard ledger of dates, amounts, and cryptic shorthand. But as they scrutinized the data, a trend surfaced. The sheet detailed numerous payouts linked to official clearances, safety certifications, and business permits granted throughout various Texas jurisdictions. The format was deceptively simple. 3 columns documenting the timing, the bribe, and a coded tag. Across a 4-year span, the ledger tracked more than $8,700,000 in suspicious transfers. Authorities now suspect these transactions funded a highly calibrated machine of systemic bribery. A single payment of $480,000 featured a remark that stopped the analysts cold. Transit route guaranteed. A separate $1,300,000 sum was funneled through an Austin-based consultancy. The most alarming revelation, however, lay at the end of the money trail. According to insiders privy to the federal probe, multiple payments were laundered through agencies intimately connected to one of the state's highest executive seats. That office was occupied by Thomas Reed Callahan, the sitting governor of Texas. Audits showed at least $3,400,000 in fees and contributions flowing into entities tied to his inner circle. Simultaneously, a separate, equally disturbing pattern came to light. For nearly 3 years, formal grievances against the nonprofit had been mysteriously mothballed within the state's oversight departments. Not a single one of those red flags had ever triggered a genuine inquiry. Then, a breakthrough, and finding from 17 months prior to the federal crackdown. A leaked internal message contained a sentence that sent a shiver through the investigative team. The text was blunt. The governor has cleared the route. Expect no hurdles. To the agents reading the file, the conclusion was as clear as it was terrifying. For 28 months, a drug pipeline had likely functioned under state-sanctioned immunity. This syndicate didn't thrive by remaining hidden. It flourished because it was granted official permission to exist. Authorities estimate that during this window, over 3.2 tons of illegal substances crossed the border in fragmented shipments. This included 1.4 tons of cocaine, 900 kilograms of meth, and 600,000 fentanyl doses. On the underground market, the haul's worth was pegged at $210 million, a figure that redirected the entire probe. What seemed like a simple case of charity embezzlement had evolved into something far more sinister. The core issue was now whether a massive drug pipeline had thrived on American soil, shielded by political insiders. For the federal task force, a single haunting inquiry now loomed over the entire case. If the operation was truly sanctioned from the inside, how many citizens had already been lost once those poisons reached the pavement? After months of tracing bank wires and tailing cargo, while monitoring encrypted chats from the charity's front companies, the feds were ready to strike. A coalition of the Bureau, the Drug Task Force, Border Security, and the Treasury Department had spent months quietly building their dossier. The shadow phase was over. At 5:12 on a Tuesday morning, command centers across Texas gave the final go-ahead. The sweep was live. Simultaneously, tactical teams moved to execute 17 warrants across 4 major Texas urban centers. Houston, Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. Over 320 federal operatives were mobilized for the mission. Within minutes, tactical units and blacked-out SUVs swarmed warehouses, corporate offices, and private estates tied to the syndicate. In Houston, agents returned to the nonprofit where the trail first started. But this time, they weren't there for a paper trail. They were dismantling the entire machine. Across the state, Treasury investigators began freezing every account linked to the uncovered shells. Digital alarms were triggered at nearly a dozen major banking institutions. Transfers were killed midstream, assets were locked down. Within hours, the government had paralyzed over $89 million in criminal capital. The crackdown didn't end there. Agents moved to seize physical goods bought with the blood money of the drug trade. Per federal reports, the operation netted 21 luxury estates, including mansions in Houston, Dallas, and Austin, along with 14 elite vehicles, such as foreign exotics, and 2 private jets registered to the network's shell firms. 9 commercial entities, serving as the logistical front for the smuggling artery, were also shuttered. The operation's peak arrived as arrest teams began picking up key players in the network. By the end of the first day, authorities had 137 suspects in custody. Those detained included freight fixers, transport contractors, money movers, and several high-ranking members of the charity's own board. Prosecutors later confirmed that multiple state officials were named in secret indictments involving the bribery scheme, and the probe is expanding. Though the charity was the financial heart of the syndicate, it wasn't the whole body. According to narcotics officials, this smuggling route likely moved over 3.22 tons of product into the country, worth over $210 million. Authorities believe more shipments are still being traced through the records. By late afternoon, the Houston office that claimed to help refugee families was cordoned off with federal evidence tape. Neighbors watched in silence as trucks hauled away crates of files and servers. For years, that building stood as a beacon of hope for struggling newcomers. But for the agents who exposed the truth, the property was now a monument to deception. It was the hub of a cartel cell that hid behind altruism, abused the public's trust, and laundered millions meant for the needy to fund a drug pipeline through the heart of Texas. An official statement that night made one thing clear: the investigation still has a long way to go. The hardest question remains: how many people knew the truth and simply looked the other way? In the days following the crackdown, the case that began at a small Houston office has become one of the most chilling federal scandals in Texas history. What began as a routine charity embezzlement probe morphed into a sprawling web of systemic graft, illicit lobbying, and cartel-run drug networks. Department of Justice officials signaled a critical escalation in their ongoing criminal inquiry. Investigators looked past the fraudulent front organizations, focusing instead on high-level political ties buried in encrypted files. Federal agents served subpoenas to various state administrators identified within the secret grand jury indictments. The governor of Texas stood among those targeted. Insiders close to the federal probe suggest that the state executive must explain suspicious wire transfers and consulting deals detailed in ledgers recovered from confiscated drives. Detectives now question if campaign contributions, policy favors, and hush money allowed this illicit pipeline to function unchecked for nearly 2 years. A terse release from the Capitol denied all allegations, pledging total transparency with the federal government's efforts. Yet, the core mysteries continue to haunt the task force. How did millions slip through state coffers without triggering a single red flag? Why were multiple grievances against the nonprofit buried by state watchdogs? Did someone in power look the other way? Federal authorities maintain that this remains a live, active case. Accountants continue dissecting a mountain of bank records. Fresh testimonies are surfacing, and the prospect of additional arrests looms over the Capitol. A minor Houston neighborhood incident has spiraled, now threatening the very foundation of the Texas political establishment. Detectives now suspect the ultimate truth reveals a reality far more sinister than mere black market trade. It exposes how effortlessly shadows thrive, where greased palms, deep pockets, and quiet compliance meet. The Baraka scandal is not just a story of a broken law. It is a heartbreaking autopsy of shattered trust. When a sanctuary meant for the vulnerable refugees seeking a second chance at life is twisted into a cold, mechanical engine for destruction, we are forced to confront a chilling reality. Evil often wears the mask of altruism. The true cost of this conspiracy isn't measured in the $210 million of illicit profit or the luxury estates seized in the night. It is measured in the quiet, unnamed tragedies of families torn apart by the 600,000 doses of fentanyl that flooded our streets under the protection of official stamps. It proves that when greed shakes hands with political silence, the most innocent among us pay the ultimate price. This case serves as a powerful call to unwavering vigilance. We must look past the polished facades and the humanitarian labels. Integrity is not found in a mission statement. It is proven in the light of transparency. We must demand accountability at every level of power, because when we stop asking questions, we allow the shadows to thrive. Let us remember, a community's safety is built on truth, not on the quiet compliance of greased palms. Justice isn't just about the raid. It's about ensuring that a hand reached out in help is never again a hand hiding a poison.